Good morning students. In our today's lecture, we are going to deal with some of the NCERT problems that are important from your board exam point of view from our chapter number 1, that is matter in our surroundings. So we have some discussion of problems over here. So our first problem is we have to tabulate the difference in the characteristics of the states of the matter. So we know that we have basically 3 states of matter: solid, liquid and gas, and on the basis of many properties it can be differentiated. So our first problem is we have 3 states of matter: solid, liquid and gas. Now what we want to do, we want to write some of the characteristics of it. Now on differentiating the characters of these 3, firstly I am considering the intermolecular distance. So our first factor is judging it on the basis of distance between the intermolecular particles. So if I consider solid particles are closely packed and very less distance among this. So in this case the distance is very less. If I consider liquid, it will have more distance. So distance more than solids. And the third factor, in case of the gases, we have interparticle separation is very large. So it is very large. Now we are judging the solid, liquid, gas on our second characteristics, that is intermolecular force of attraction. If I am talking about intermolecular force of attraction, so the solids have a closely bound structure. It means it have a strong electrostatic force. In case of liquids, the force of attraction is less. And if I consider gases, the force of attraction is very less. So it is very less. Now we will talk about the nature of the composition of these substances. So the third characteristics will be judged on the basis of nature. What is the nature of solids? Solids have definite shape and volume. Definite shape and volume. If I consider liquid, they do not have definite shape, but they have definite volume. So lastly we are provided with the gases. In case of the gases, we do not have a neither definite shape nor definite volume. So the correct answer for it is neither definite shape nor volume. So these are the point of differentiation between the different characteristics of solid, liquid and gas. In this series we have many more characteristics to distinguish among them. Now we are coming to our problem of solution B, that is what is the following statement will specify. So in this series we have a first statement, that is rigidity. So students, what actually the rigidity is? Rigidity means if a certain compound or solid have a tendency to retain in its original shape. If I consider the example of solid have a definite mass and volume and it have the ability to retain its shape. It means it will not compress if we apply certain form of pressure on it. So rigidity is the property to retain its original shape. To retain original shape and size. Now we are on our next problem, that is compressibility. Compressibility means ability to compress something if we apply pressure on it. suppose I am applying pressure on the gases have a tendency to compress, and this phenomena or this property is basically used in the balloons in which the gas is filled at a very low pressure. So compressibility is the ability to compress anything. So our second term is compressibility, and the compressibility basically means ability to compress, and it is higher in cases of gas. So I hope rigidity and compressibility must be clear to you. Now we are on our third term, that is fluidity. Fluidity basically means ability to flow any particular type of the liquid. If I am considering the case of liquid and gas, what we will see, gases are more fluid as compared to liquids. So fluidity in case of gases is maximum. So we are with our next term, that is fluidity. And what we have discussed, we have talked about rigidity, compressibility, and we are on our next term, that is fluidity. Fluidity basically means ability of the flow of any type of liquid. So fluidity is ability to flow. Now we are on our next term, that is we have to comment upon the term filling a gas container. So what do we mean about filling a gas container? We know that gases have a much intermolecular separation between them. If I fill the gases in the container, what actually the gases do, they will occupy the corners as well as the four walls of the container. So gases will occupy the complete container. This application is basically used in case of LPG cylinders that we are used in our homes, and the oxygen cylinders that are basically used in hospitals. So this is the application for filling a gas in the container. Now we are on our next term, that is shape. Shape basically determine the shape of a substance in the three-dimensional space. If I consider the solid as a shape, solids have a rigid shape. Next we have a term, that is kinetic energy. Kinetic energy of a particle is due to the motion of the particles in a three-dimensional space. So kinetic energy is the energy possessed by the body due to its motion. So what is kinetic energy? Energy possessed by body due to its motion. Energy possessed by body due to its motion. Now we are with our last term, that what will be the density of a substance. Density is basically defined as a mass per unit volume. So if we are talk about the density, if the mass is greater, density will be greater. But if we compare the density with volume, if volume is larger, the density must be low. So our next term is density. Density means mass upon volume. So it is defined as a mass per unit volume, and if I say the mass is greater, then density will be greater. But if we compare the density and volume, what we are seeing here, these two terms are in inverse proportion. So if the volume is greater, the density will be low. So it is all about the relationship between the density, mass and volume. Now we are with our third term, that is we have to give the reasons why gases fills completely in the vessels. As I have already told you that gases have a much interparticle separation between them, so they will occupy the entire container, and this application is used in filling LPG cylinders and oxygen cylinders. So it means gases have an intermolecular separation between them. So the correct answer for this will be gases will have a interparticular separation between them. Our second problem is a gas exert a pressure on the walls of the container. As we know that gases have much intermolecular particle separation between them, but the force of attraction between the particle is very less. So what actually happens, the particles randomly move in all direction and strike to the wall of the container. A wooden table should be called as a solid. So if I consider the wooden table, it has a rigid structure. So the rigid structure can be classified in the category of solid. And what actually happens, if I try to compress the table, it will not be compressed easily. So it is the another characteristic of the solid. Now we have on our fourth problem, we can easily move our hand in the air, but in the solid block of wood we need a karate expert. So what actually happens here, there is a air present in this room. If I automatically move my hand in this space, so what I see, it is ability to move the hand in the air, because the air has a intermolecular particle separation between them is very low. So if I move my hand, there is a space between them. But if I consider any example of solid over here, then it will not be able for me to move my hand in this block, because it is a solid and it does not have any intermolecular separation between these particles. So these are the basic reasons for some of the problems. Now we are on our next problem. Liquids generally have a lower density as compared to solid, but we have observed that ice floats on water. So if the liquid have low density and solids have greater density, then why ice floats on water? It means it has to be settled down at the bottom of the container, but this thing actually does not happen, because if I consider ice, in case of ice we have a cage-like structure. In this cage-like structure, what we have the separation between the particles. And these separations will be occupied by gas. If these separations are occupied by the gas, or it will have a certain form of water in it, then we can conclude that volume of water is greater than volume of spaces between them. Volume of water is greater than volume of spaces. And if I consider the formula for density, density is calculated as mass per unit volume. It means if the volume of water is high, its density must be low. So density of water is less. So in this case, ice floats on the surface of the water in spite of being settled at the bottom of the container. So these discussions are enough for today, and we will deal with some of the problems in our next lecture. Thank you so much.